Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dager, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Alan Bustamante. Alan is the founder of Xcelerate Partners in Cincinnati, Ohio, and has been helping organizations adopt value-driven and innovative software development practices through his work as a trainer and a coach. You know what we've left out of this conversation a little bit, okay, and probably a great place to end it, okay, is the role of leadership in developing an agile organization. In Lean, we always think that leadership needs to be on board, and we don't talk about just being on board. We're talking about they need to be at Gemba. They need to be practicing Lean themselves, okay? And you know, as I always put it, you got to be on the same boat and in the middle of the lake with one of the oars, okay? Badly.
Sure.
How does that work in Agile? Can I just say, oh, we're going to become Agile. You guys are Agile. You know, go get trained to be Agile.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of the key words that I like to use, which is the Gemba, right? Going to the Gemba, as they say in Lean, and I've been very vocal about that. Leadership, to answer your question more directly, leadership absolutely plays a critical role in this. And it doesn't mean that they are necessarily following some process, as you know, like Scrum, for example, or Kanban or whatever. It doesn't mean that they're following a process necessarily, as much as they're exhibiting the ability to lead knowledge workers, because that's the domain I'm in. And I would say even in manufacturing these days, you really have to be a skilled worker to work in a manufacturing plant now with all the technology, because a lot of this stuff is done by robots and machines that are using computers to drive them. So it's this high-tech manufacturing that's been the word that's been tossed around a lot. And so in those cases now we're seeing, almost every type of worker across multiple industries, and certainly in my industry in software, that you're working with knowledge workers, and those need to be handled. Those workers need to be treated as like, that they are the ones with the knowledge. They are the ones who are providing the expertise. They're living, breathing, thinking individuals, and so it's less about a process, I think, for leadership as it is understanding how to lead those knowledge workers. So one of the things that I do emphasize with my customers at the leadership level is, and of course we have trainings that we take leadership through. One of my colleagues, Skip Angel, he just created a class called Agile for Leaders for our client, and it's a great class, and it talks a lot about personality styles and servant leadership, and that's great. And I think all leaders, any lean thinking leader, needs to go through some sort of training to understand how to better lead knowledge workers. It's not as in the old days, was it Frederick Winslow Taylor who believed in more of a directive approach, and a lot of our management styles have come from that old mentality, whenever that was, in the early 1900s, I think, of directive style management. Whereas now leading, where you're saying it's less about directing and more about facilitating and making sure people are serving, leaders are serving or leading through serving. So removing blockers and making a work environment that's enjoyable for their people, and trusting them to do the work in a good way and to provide value and a quality product, and really just facilitating their needs. So a lot of what or part of that is going back to what you said about the Gemba. When I'm working with leaders, they do the training, but then also I try to get them to go out and go to the Gemba, go out to where the work is done, even at the senior leadership levels. And I've had people say, well, geez, my day's so busy already. You can't really expect me to go to every single team and see what they're looking at or working on. And I tell them, I say, I'm not telling you or asking you to do that every single day, but maybe once a month you pick a team, or once a week, or however often you feel like you can dedicate to this, some is better than none, and try it. Maybe you go visit a team once a month, and if you find it enjoyable and it's very productive and the teams enjoy it, which I'm sure they will, then maybe you do it once every couple of weeks and just an experiment. But taking that attitude of going to the Gemba and seeing where the work is done and talking to the people who are on the floor. It doesn't have to be a manufacturing floor. It could be, the people who are building that software product, and talking to them and finding out where are their struggles, how can they as leaders help improve their business, by improving the environment that their people are working in. So, and part of that is also encouraging this idea of open communication and transparency, because a lot of organizations that I go into, they they have this like the mentality or the culture, if you will, which is a big part of what I do when I'm working with these other coaches, is to help change the culture, changing it so that they're not in this shoot the messenger mode, which is unfortunately a lot of organizations that we see. And part of the reason I stay employed, right, is because these organizations are somewhat dysfunctional, but getting them to change their culture so that it's not to shoot the messenger, but to embrace that openness and transparency. And that's, to me, is what lean leadership is that serving through leading through serving, creating that open, transparent environment so people can feel comfortable coming to them and talking about the issues without having this fear that it's going to affect their next raise or bonus or being shot, or they're going to be given the pink slip and those kinds of things. But yes, absolutely. I find leadership is absolutely critical. A lot of organizations start from the bottom. They start the change from the bottom, and that works for a little bit. But the rocks that have to be moved at the bottom level, or I guess what I'll say is the rocks that can be moved are really the small rocks. It requires leadership to come in from the top to help support and move the big rocks. And so absolutely, we need leadership, much more leadership training and coaching out there we need more than I see today, but definitely a key component.
I saw one of the things that Benson of Personal Kanban wrote about one time, and he talked about a Kanban boardwalk. Okay, of walking down the boards and everything. And I thought, what a leadership walk, right? Is to walk down in front of all those Kanban boards and experience a daily meeting once a week, or something like that. You didn't have to go in there and say, oh, we need to be doing this. And just listen to the daily meeting in front of a Kanban board, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly leaders can adopt those processes for managing the flow of work. And I know I do help leaders with that as well. And a part of adopting Agile at scale is controlling the funnel of work that's coming in and flowing down to the teams. And at the portfolio level, often that requires some sort of view into the organization, the amount of project work or the initiatives that are being created. And yeah, absolutely, that kind of tooling, having the board, being able to look at the board and then discuss with anybody that's considered a stakeholder, for sure.
What's the best way for someone to contact you and learn more about Alan?
Well, you can catch me on the web. So my company is Xcelerate Partners, but that's with an X. So it's X as in Xavier, CELERATE partners.com. Or you could go to increaseagility.com, and that would take you to my company's website. And then you can also reach me via email by my first name, Alan, ALAN, at XceleratePartners.com.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for listening. This podcast will be available on the Business 901 iTunes Store and the Business 901 website. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joe.